Live. So good evening, everyone. This is, here we have Doc Abbey, all the way from America, I believe, aren't
hello,
you? Lovely to see you. I see we've got 26 people in the room. Do say hello and where you're from. It helps us because then we're not speaking to a void, and we get a sense, and and we also know that you can hear us. The light's very bright, Steve. I don't know whether.
Oh, yes, it's gone a bit.
It's gone funny, hasn't it?
Oh, there you are. Back to normality.
You're back to normality.
I don't know why I did that.
That's lovely. Welcome, everybody. Let's all sense, while I check that everybody's getting in and there are no messages on the front page of the Hearth, let's just imagine we're coming into the Sacred Grove, where it's this event is for members only, and so we can all come into the Sacred Grove together. And oh, that's a surprise. Let me make sure that
fill in, Philip, while you're
Sorry?
doing. Shall I fill in if you're doing?
Yes, do.
I'm just looking at where everybody is. We're spanning the globe. It's wonderful. We see somebody from New Zealand and various bits of Europe, Arizona. I've been there. Bits of the UK, Finland. Joanna's in Finland. Vivian in Wiltshire, Yorkshire, Redditch. So we're around here, and Ontario, and our friend from South Africa, which is excellent. Dawn in Florida, where I hope things are good now. So yeah, you're many and varied. Wonderful.
How lovely. Yes, and I think I've just checked on my iPad and it seems to be working correctly. So welcome, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's all take a few minutes. Let's take a few moments to settle in the Sacred Grove together, just as more people arrive. Let's just imagine that we're coming into the clearing, and here we are in the Sacred Grove. Time to take a deep breath in, hold for a moment, and just as we breathe out, just letting some of the tension of the day drop away from us. And then another deep breath in. Yeah. Feeling the good earth beneath us, the trees around us, the sky above us. And then let's just gently open our eyes, just opening our eyes so that we're connecting with the screen. It's a lovely group of 35 of us, 36 of us from around the world. And I'm here with Steve Hounsome. Many of you will know Steve, perhaps from the tarot courses that we do online, but also because Steve has been in the order for over 30 years. I asked him just before we went live how long, and he said about 380 years. But you think you joined in the 90s, Steve?
It was someone in the 90s. I couldn't give you a year. I'd have to look.
Yeah, so yeah, so about at least 30 years, say. Yeah. And then you were a mentor for 12 years.
I was, yes. When I finished my druid, I wanted to do that.
Yeah, and then
I loved it.
So you loved it. And Susan Jones, who was the mentor coordinator for 17 years, I believe, she invited you to be the mentor coordinator. She said to me, yes, Steve would be fantastic as a mentor coordinator.
Well, I assisted her for a while. She said, would you want to help out with some admin and all of that?
Great.
And then when she retired from it,
right,
I succeeded.
Right. Yeah, that's lovely. And so you did that for about 6 years.
I did.
And then I suppose what happened, basically, to put it very simply, is some very difficult and challenging experiences came your way. And this is what we wanted to focus on in this conversation this evening. And I'd like to thank you very much for agreeing to do this, because these are difficult subjects to talk about, really tough.
Yeah.
And you're going to talk about it from your personal experience, and then we can broaden it out to sort of look at these issues.
Yeah.
But maybe to begin with, so people can understand, start off by telling us, what happened.
Yes, yes. I don't know what's going on with the light, by the way, before I do. So
It
apologies for
occasionally,
that. It seems to be self-adjusting, and I don't know why it doesn't normally do that, but we'll ignore that.
yeah,
So yes, well, what happened was that 4 years ago now, just over 4 years ago, my lovely wife Amy was diagnosed with a form of lung cancer. And at that point, she was basically given a year to live.
yes,
As I say, this was 4 years ago, and she's fit and well and healthy, and as we speak, cancer free, which is fantastic. But medical people have to give you the worst case scenario. Sadly, they run on a thing of being scared of getting sued. If they give you false information, they're all scared of being sued now, which is sad. But they really are. They've quoted that for us. I'm saying this so that you can't sue us.
right, really. They've
But
actually,
anyway,
yeah.
So and Amy had, various treatments, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and all that goes with it. And the cancer had spread. She had a brain tumor as well, which involved radiotherapy to that, which is really quite horrendous to witness. But she's an absolute trooper and has come through it incredibly well. Unlike me, she lost her previously waist length hair. So, these things happen. Different forms of chemotherapy, some do cause you to lose your hair. Mine didn't. But anyway, she did, and it's grown back. She now has a beautiful head of hair again. Not quite that long, but anyway. But we've gone through all this. But they give the diagnosis of terminal or incurable, because generally speaking, once a cancer has spread or metasized to somewhere other than its primary location, in Amy's case, her lung or lungs, then they can't get rid of it completely and eradicate it.
And I would imagine this is 4 years ago.
Yes.
You both hear this diagnosis. I imagine it must be absolutely devastating when you first get the diagnosis.
Yes. I mean, it's an utter shock. We were treated extremely well, and I'm somebody, given our position, who is absolutely fiercely protective and supportive of the NHS, because they're brilliant, as simple as that. But yes, they took us into a side room with 4 or 5 members of staff. Our daughter Laura there, who was a medical person, sat in with us, and we were given as much time and space as we needed. Nobody said, we need to kick you out the room now. We could have stayed there, for a long time. But yes, you're in an utter state of shock. And that takes time, and then telling people and all sorts, ensues. And it was a question of just taking each bit in our stride for the onset of her ongoing her ongoing chemotherapy, which is regular visits to the hospital. And you literally came away, or I came away with a carrier bag full of drugs, as follow-up. There's antibiotics and there's tablets to take of all sorts, and so that then carried on. But yes, she's done incredibly well. And for the last 2 years or so, there's been no NED. It's called no evidence of disease, cancer anywhere in her.
Really, the brain tumor and the lung cancer seem to have gone from her.
Absolutely. Yep. They were scanning every 3 months, until I think about a year back. Then it moved to every 4 months. And the last time we saw her oncologist, he said, look, you're doing really good, which is quite amazing. So we'll take it back to 6 months now. And that'll be in January, her next one. But she's fit and good,
That's lovely.
We're positive. Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yes.
But what happened was that wasn't the only challenging thing that happened to you, was it?
No, it was
There was
not. And this was probably the worst. Well, it is the worst bit. Was that our beautiful daughter Laura? I mean, she's my stepdaughter, but that's really no difference. She was in her degree program. She worked at Paul Hospital, where we are both treated, and was doing her degree program to be a diagnostic radiographer, which is the sort of people who do CT scans and so on. There was an incident where Amy was booked in to have a scan. Laura was on duty, and it was a sudden thing, and we didn't have time to contact Laura. Laura looked on the screen to see, it's coming in. So, oh, look, that person's, got what my mum's got. Hang on, that is my mum. So, so that was quite an interesting thing. But anyway, yes. So Laura, it suddenly and very tragically died. She was 32. And she basically just choked to death. She was asthmatic all her life, but she just simply choked on some coffee, went down the wrong way, as we say. I kept choking, couldn't get a breath, and first one lung and then the other collapsed, and air ambulance was involved, and so on. They did manage to revive her heart, but that was after about 18 minutes, by which time the majority of the function of the brain had gone. She was on life support for, sorry, just give me a minute. She was on life support for about 4 days, but when they revived her a bit, reduced some of the drug dosage, they revived her for a bit, but it showed that she, really wasn't there. So they turned her off, and we lost our darling Laura. Yeah. And so, which, far exceeds Amy and my trials and tribulations, because it's just a thing of, there's something kind of logically wrong about it when a child dies before a parent. I'm trying not to swear, but it messes with your brain.
I can imagine. And of course, Laura had children as well.
Laura had children, two boys, Connor and Aidan, yes, who are, and it'll be 3 years in January, and Connor's 10, Aidan is 8.
So they've lost their mum. Yeah.
They've lost their mum. Yeah. Kids are incredibly resilient. They're so much, they don't do a lot of the stuff up here that we have to put ourselves through, but she is obviously still talked about all the time.
Yeah.
They were here Sunday actually and asking questions about her. There's always memories, and we keep that going. But yeah.
And and I remember when you and I made the films for the Tarot Chakra course.
Yes.
And I had this silly idea that we could film it on a boat because a friend of mine had let us stay the night on his boat in Poole Harbour.
Poole Harbour, yeah. I live in Poole in Dorset, by the way, for everybody.
Yes. Steve lives in the most lovely part of the country, Poole in Dorset. And these friends had a boat, and they said, if you want to make this film with your friend, stay in our boat. And I thought we could make the films on the boat. And what we discovered is that it's not very good to make. It moves, and so the background we'd be sitting there, and it would be doing this all the time. So it didn't. But it was lovely to have you and Amy, for us to sit there and have a coffee there. And I remember Amy at that time. Laura having died, she was into what, year 2 of her cancer journey?
Yes. Yeah.
And she said, I just want to go now. If my daughter's gone,
I don't know what people will make of this, but you saying that, it popped into my head, so I'll just say it. It's that when Amy and I were the only people who went to see Laura's body in her in the coffin, and I physically had to stop Amy from getting in.
Really?
Literally,
Yeah.
I had to
Oh,
hold it
God.
back. Yeah, but that's a mum. What do you do?
Yeah.
And she
Gosh.
would willingly go, and she's looking forward to seeing her.
Yeah.
There's a kind of twisted sort of a comfort in it, but
Yeah.
she's quite open about that.
Yeah. 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 I was, Steph and I afterwards were so impressed by Amy and what she said. I mean,
She's
because
amazing.
you completely get, having kids, ourselves, you
Mm,
totally, you're there with Amy.
yeah,
Totally understood what she was saying, and I would feel the same way. And you
yeah,
know, so a funny, I mean, just an unusual. I mean, like it's obviously a huge tragedy. But
yeah,
as you say, you said twisted, in a strange
yeah.
way, a sort of comfort, because then
Mm.
your own death sort of get a certain perspective on it, I suppose, and also
Well,
again,
yes.
well, is that how?
Uh, yes, not quite as direct as facing your own death, because of course Amy and I both done that as well.
Yeah, yeah,
um, but yes,
yeah,
it's and I found it through my life. I've lost lots of people to cancer. I was thinking about this
mm,
before we started. Actually, I mean,
mm,
both my parents had died of cancer by the
mm,
time I was in my mid-30s. My
right,
best friend died. She was 46,
mm,
so I would have been about 40. And my first spiritual teacher actually died of a weird and rare form of cancer, although
right,
she was just fine about it. But that was Linda. She was incredible.
right, yeah,
So but what was different was, but after both my mum and dad had died, I
mm,
thought, bloody hell, I'm next.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yes, yeah, you're the next in line, kind of thing.
So that
Yeah,
that kind of logic goes. But then when somebody younger than you, like Laura obviously died, then logic goes.
yeah,
You can't understand why. There is no understanding why. And for me, that was massively important. I needed an answer. I needed to know, why has this happened?
yeah,
And I've come to accept that the only person that knows why that's happened is Laura.
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
um, I turned to the tarot because that's what I do, and the
mm,
tarot played a massive part in processing my grief.
mm.
Um, and I put it in a book, as you
Can
know,
I just say, sorry, Steve, you
tarot
keep
for
whacking
grief.
the micro. You keep
Yeah,
whacking
so,
the microphone. Just so you know, you keep hitting the microphone with your hand or something.
oh, it's the table.
It's the
Sorry,
table, is
I've
it?
got my
Okay.
I'll try and take my hands off my desk. Yes,
Okay. And just to go back, the tarot is a huge help to you, and
yes,
you wrote a book which, hold it up
yeah.
again. Hold it up again.
Sorry, yes, tarot for grief.
Tarot for grief. And
Yeah.
you found that using the tarot helped you to process your grief in some way?
Well, it did, because it's that obviously, I think most people probably know I work with the tarot in the way that
Mm,
I do, therapeutically and developmentally and so on.
mm,
And I was just trying to work out, well, how do I do this? How
mm,
the hell do I get my head around this and understand it? What do I do with what I'm feeling? And so I don't really do spreads and readings. I take a card, and
mm,
there's a card on my desk just here,
mm,
and then I journaled, and just typed up some notes and responses to that. And then that felt it shifted. So I took another card, and it kind of carried on. And
mm,
then I found myself sort of writing the book, because I looked up, I thought, well, there mmust be a guide to this.
mm,
Excuse me, somebody must have written
mm.
a book about it, and nobody had. So I thought, well, I'll do it.
Right.
And so the journal, or a large part of it, I did leave out a few of the very much more personal bits, but a lot of the journal of those cards is in the back of the book to show
Right.
people that it's real.
And I remember at the time when you were working on that book, you talked about this term that I hadn't come across before, which was anticipatory grief.
Yes, or
Um,
preparatory grief or anticipatory grief. It's a
yes,
thing. Yeah.
it's a thing, which is, you're going to get hit with a massive loss,
Yes.
but you don't know when exactly. But the
Mm,
doctors have said it's imminent, so
yeah.
you're preempting it or anticipating it.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Yes, and I did start to write a follow-up volume on that, but I'm actually thinking of changing it to palliative tarot, or maybe the subtitle of Tarot for Living and Dying. I've just finished another book, the Tarot
Yeah.
Therapy Workbook. I'm plugging myself, isn't this
Yeah,
terrible?
this is okay
But you know,
because this is we're all different, and this is the way your tarot is your thing, and this is the way
yeah,
you're getting to grips with this incredibly
mm,
important and little not sufficiently discussed topic. So I think it's
yeah,
wonderful that you're doing that.
mm,
It's wonderful that you're
thank you.
doing that.
Mm,
And then if I've got the sequence right, correct me if
yeah,
I'm wrong, but you were working on that.
mm,
Laura had gone.
yeah,
Amy, you thought was going soon. You were
yeah.
working with Tara,
Mm.
and then you got the news about your own health. You started to feel
I did.
unwell.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned, when you were down here doing, and we did the filming for the Tara Chakra course,
Mm,
because I remembered the other day, it's in our conservatory and I do my yoga and whatnot in there, and it suddenly came into my mind the other morning when I was doing it, that we were having a conversation. We were setting up the lighting and so on. We were having a conversation about how Amy's doing, and I
mm,
think you had said something, how was I coping with it, where was I at, or whatever.
yeah,
And I remember actually saying to you, one of the bizarre things, Philip, is that I keep imagining that I've got cancer, and of course I'm not. I'm fine and all of that, but,
yeah,
which wise words not,
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I've been someone, I've exercised all my life. I'm an ex-marathon runner, and I've run, half marathons and loads of them, and all sorts, and cycled. I play tennis. I work out and do yoga. I'm a fit bloke.
yeah. And you're
And
vegetarian.
yes, yeah, I've
Yeah,
been vegetarian since I was 17.
yeah,
For no great spiritual reason. It's just that my girlfriend at the time was, so I did. But I've then stayed with
yeah.
it. It works for me. So, but anyway, yes, and we got COVID. That was what happened.
Mm,
Both Amy and I got COVID. We had avoided it because we literally isolated right the way through the pandemic.
mm,
We had to, because of Amy's immune system. The chemotherapy wipes out your immune system. So
mm,
I couldn't even go to the supermarket at all. Somebody did that for us. We had it delivered. So we'd avoided the thing, and I got it. Amy was given some medication which they had come up with by then for people with compromised immunity, and that sorted her out. And I didn't get better. I got worse, and I lost weight. I'm not a big bloke. I'm only 10.5 stone in weight
mm.
now, which has always been my normal weight. And I went down to just over 9 stone. I didn't eat, couldn't. Um, and ended up in hospital anyway. And they thought it was a gallbladder infection initially. And I thought, that's okay. I'll buy that. A couple of weeks of antibiotics, I'll be fine.
Mm.
But they did various tests and all of that, and I was in hospital for about a week. And a very nice doctor casually mentioned that it was cancer. I said, "You mean this might be cancer?" He said, "No, this is cancer."
Mm.
Oh, right. That was how I was told, which was somewhat different to Amy's, but there we
So
are.
yes, you were told sort of in passing, as it were, as
Yeah,
opposed to
yeah.
being taken into a separate room. And
Yes,
God,
absolutely. So, that bit of the NHS experience was the only bad one, but that was a huge shock.
mm,
Um, just from the fact that I had cancer, And it turned out anyway that they said the cancer was in my pancreas.
mm,
And I was I was in hospital for 5 days, and I think for at least 3 of them, I was saying, "Can I go home now? Can I go home now?" I just wanted to
mm.
go home. But when they did, they assigned me a palliative care nurse whose first words to me were, "How do you feel about dying?" Um, you know,
Wow.
I won't give you the whole response, but it was,
Well,
how do you think I feel?
I bet.
Yeah.
Was that a skillful way for her to begin the conversation, do you think?
No,
Or no? No, you would have preferred a
absolutely not.
slightly gentler,
Yeah.
approach
Well,
to the
it's
topic.
because, I hadn't been told the the level of diagnosis at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know I was close to death, which I was
Right.
at that point,
Yeah.
because pancreatic cancer is a bad one.
Yeah.
There's not much they can do about it, and you have months,
Yeah.
generally speaking. I mean, that is not a standard thing, but
Yeah.
it's a more serious one. But with further investigations and so on, it turned out that the type of cancer I have is neuroendocrine. NET, it's called neuroendocrine tumor. And the majority of it is actually on my liver. And with some on the pancreas, but the primary site is the pancreas. But my liver was 3 times the size it should have been at the time of diagnosis. Everything up here was swollen. It was really unpleasant and not nice at all. And so they gave me lots of chemotherapy. I did chemo for just over a year. Mine was not as horrendous as some is. Mine was tablet rather than intravenous in your arm. You don't feel great, but and you have various other medications. But that was why it was at that point I had to stop being the mentor coordinator.
That's right. That's right.
Because I physically, I was on morphine and all sorts of other things, and I had a tremor. I couldn't type because my hand was constantly.
Yeah.
I just remember phoning you and said, "I'm going to have to stop. I can't type. I can't do it."
Yeah.
Which, as an author, was a nightmare as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So that carried on, but over that time, the cancer in my liver has reduced, enormously. My blood liver count last month, they test me every month, was the lowest it's ever been, which is fantastic. It was within a normal range of 137. When we started, it was over 1,000. But because they thought it was, pancreatic cancer, they gave me palliative care because they thought it would be the beginning of my end within a few months. Amy did say she looked at me at one point and thought he's dying.
She looked at you and thought you were dying. Yeah.
And I was laid on our sofa, which I did a lot of. So I was, very much confronted suddenly and unknowingly with the reality of my death. I'd gone from, being fit and healthy. The only indication something wasn't right was when I'd be laying on my tummy to do yoga, and I could feel some pressure sort of below the rib cage. I thought, that's a bit, I wonder what that is, no big deal, and carried on. But that was the liver swelling up because of the cancer. So, but probably good and worthwhile mentioning, as we stand, I'm good, I'm healthy, I'm fit and exercising. I'm not on treatment at the moment beyond the monthly injection, which is somewhat painful, but there we are. Which carries on attacking the slower growing bits of the cancer in the pancreas. But other than that, I'm fine.
You're fine. And what's your sense of? I can imagine, you were presented with this diagnosis, and you thought, okay, it's pancreatic cancer. I've just got a few months. Then they changed the diagnosis, and then in terms of the prognosis, where's your horizon gone to, or does that not become an issue?
My first instinct with that, Philip, is to say tomorrow, because there isn't really a horizon, because it's an unknown. In one way, and it isn't being dramatic, but you are on a kind of borrowed time, because whilst I am open and I do have an ongoing healing regime, which we might mention in a bit, perhaps, of things I'm doing, and so I'm totally open to the cancer going. Medically speaking, they have said we cannot get rid of this,
right?
So basically, this is going to kill me, kind of thing. I'm open to miracle cures, inverted commas, but so one of the things that happens almost instinctively or automatically is that you do live much more in the present moment. There is only now, and there really is only now, so long-term plans are difficult to make, but you make them anyway, kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
you carry on living your life with an expectation, knowing that it could all change. You know, in any scan or follow up, either Amy or myself could suddenly find the cancer's growing again, and then we'll deal with that.
So is there a positive side to the fact that you're living more in the moment? Does that
Yes.
bring its own gift with it?
Yes, there is a lot of gifts actually. You know, I think some people would tend to think, oh, you know, will start doing everything on your so-called bucket list and go off and have cruises and all of that. And in
Mm,
reality, unless you've got tons of money to do all that, you know, the reality is very different. But what you do is you really do appreciate being alive, you know. And I know it just sounds like a cliche, but I do. I
yeah.
really do. You know, it's small things and things like spending time with the ones that you love,
Mm.
you know, and in the company of your friends, and just appreciating coffee and cake,
Yeah.
which Amy and I do quite a lot of, you know, small things and all of that. But it's actually your everyday stuff.
Mm.
Um, and but even small things, I've been an early riser, you know, for well, most of my life really, and it's still dark, you know. So when I'm boiling the kettle for my Earl Grey tea, which is how I start my day, and I love it, and I
Mm.
read and have a cup of Earl Grey, it's beautiful. And while the kettle's boiling, I can look at the stars if it's clear,
Mm.
and just stand, you know, in the conservatory looking at those, and it's beautiful, things like that. So my sense of spirituality, if you like, became a lot more alive, you know.
Yes.
So there are blessings in that way. You know, small bits are more important. You really do enjoy the good stuff.
Yes. Yes. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Mm.
I just want to, at this point, acknowledge the fact that lots of lovely messages are coming in.
Yes, I've kind
Um,
of eyed a few.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. You know, are you able to see that you can see them at your end?
I can.
But just so you know that, and to say, um, yeah, I just
There's
think
an awful lot
maybe
there.
you and I just spend a few seconds just looking through them all. You know, I'm
Yeah,
so
and
glad
thank
you're
you
well now.
everybody
But
for your love and care that's coming through those.
yes,
They
yes,
really are appreciated. Um, you know, and things like that, when I put out, you know, on my Facebook page and all of that when I was diagnosed, the flood of love that came back in, you know, is quite incredible. Lots of them owe bodies, you know.
it, uh,
They really are enormously brilliant people.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
well, Obod is extraordinary. I mean, I've had a look.
yes,
There's a serious illness circle, as you know, because you know you coordinate the circles now.
yes,
You administer the circles for Obod,
yeah,
um, and there's a serious illness circle. You know, and I guess
mm,
many of the people in that circle will either be watching this now or
yeah,
the
I'm sure.
recording, because we'll put the
Mm,
recording up on in the archive.
mm,
Um, and to see the support that people get, and the fact that we've you know, makes me really proud. I can't think what the word is. Happy,
proud,
not
you should be
happy
for
and
it.
proud. Does it sound like the wrong words? But
Absolutely.
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Warm. That we can have this in the order, that we can give each other that support.
yeah,
And I know you soldiered on for a long time. After your diagnosis, I said to you, "Look, do you want to stop doing the mentor coordinator?" And you said,
mm,
"No, I want to keep going."
yeah.
And you know, you carried on until, as you were saying, your hands were shaking and you couldn't even
Yeah,
type, so it was kind of,
yeah.
you couldn't do it. You then handed over, and you know, and I remember being so impressed. I remember telling Matthew this, who came to your house to
Yeah,
collect it,
yeah,
because
quite
here's an
totally.
amazing way, everybody, that did a little story I want to tell you about how Steve approached this. So Steve had, because I've stayed there in your house, and
Mm.
in Steve's office, he had, how many filing cabinets was it?
They were kind of where all these
There were
books are
about
now.
six, weren't
There
there?
were 6, yes, there were, yeah,
6
4.
filing
Yeah,
cabinets,
yeah,
you know, with all the you know, the reviews, student reviews, and student correspondence. Basically, the archive, or the office
mm,
of material for the mentoring. And I remember saying to you, Steve, "Okay, I you know, I can understand you can't do the job anymore.
mm,
Um, just know that anytime you want to pick it up again, it's there for you. You know, we're here for you, Steve. We'll do whatever
Yeah.
you need us to do.
Yeah.
As regards the, you know, these filing cabinets, you know, a part of me was being very practical and thinking,
Yeah.
if somebody's got to take over from you, you know, they need access to these documents. But I didn't want to
Yes.
I didn't want to upset you by saying, well, we'll come and take all that away. You know, that
Yeah.
felt
No.
a bit brutal, you know. But I said, you know, what are we going to do that? And you said, no, I think it would be good to take them away. And then you had this fantastic reframe of it or understanding of it. You said, it'll help to clear the energy. It'll be a kind of freeing for me.
Did I? Yeah.
You know, and I was, so you saw it, you had an absolutely positive take on what somebody else might have seen as symbolic of you, of loss, really. You know,
Right.
somebody
Yeah.
turns up in a van and removes all your, you know, all the files. You know, you could
Yes.
have seen that in a very negative way, but you saw it in this fantastically positive way. And you know, my son Matthew came, you know, hired a van, drove over to you, and
Yeah.
he was so impressed too. He said, "Wow, Steve is amazing. You know, he's
Oh,
an amazing guy. You know," and he carried them all and, you know, took them away to the office and everything.
really wasn't too well at that point because I was mid chemo then. It was all I could do
Yeah,
was shuffle around the house.
exactly. No, he was incredibly impressed. You know, and then the story goes on because about how long was it? Was it like 6 months, a year, 9 months when you came back and you said, "Give me some work to do"?
Yeah. It was 9 months,
9 months.
I
Interesting
think.
period, isn't it? 9
Yeah.
months
Yeah.
later, Steve called me and said, "You know, I'm feeling better, and I'd like to do some work."
So what? Yeah.
And by that time, we'd, you know, Fee was running the mentoring and all the rest of it. So you agreed to sort of consult on that and help her
Yeah.
in the background. But then the Hearth was the new project we were
Yes.
working on.
Yes.
And, you know, we knew what a fantastic person you were. And so you've taken over the administering the circles on the Hearth. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Which is great. I get to see everything going on. It's lovely.
yeah. And let me ask you a question now, which is so that where you're at. Well, maybe let's get to it, because you've told us this extraordinary, this awful bad, you know, some people would say bad luck, but basically three pieces of news, three events that occurred that were just devastating. Um, you and Amy are here. Forgive me. And you've sort of defied the prognoses, and you're here living in the moment. But
Yeah.
and you know, I've forgotten what the question is now. Hang on. So that's got us to the present moment. We're now sharing it because, you know, when you and I talk, we say, you know, this is difficult, really hard subject, but so good to be open about it, because of course either people are going through it, as they are in the serious illness circle, many
Of
people,
course. Yes.
you know, or you're worried about it, and you have, there's all sorts of ways in which this is, you know, and we're all going to die basically.
Yep. Yeah.
So you know, we may as well talk about these things. What I want to know now is, I suppose I'm just going to come with questions that occur to
Go
me,
for it.
and
Absolutely.
if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask Steve,
Yeah.
think
Don't,
about it.
don't hold back.
Don't hold back.
That's why I'm
I
here.
mean, you know, Steve was brilliant. I said to Steve, "Are there any no-go areas? Is there anything you don't want me to ask you?" And he said, "No, just go for it." You know.
Yeah, I do have Amy's. I did ask Amy as well, just so everybody knows that, and she's the same as me.
And Amy was, yeah. So that's brilliant. So what I suppose is, my fantasy is, my worry is that if I was in your position and I was given a diagnosis like that, I would immediately give up. I'd sort of, there'd be the shock, and then I'd sort of surrender. I wouldn't fight. Let's put it that way. Stephanie says to me, you know, you never know how you're going to behave until something happens. You know?
No, you don't. I think she's right.
Did you before it happened to you, did you, in your fantasy as it were, did you think, oh, if I ever get a diagnosis like that, I'll give up? Or did that not occur to you?
Not once I'd seen Amy.
Right.
Once, you know, she had just said, "Well, I'll fight this."
I'll fight this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was her thing, you know.
That was her thing,
This was obviously pre-Laura's passing.
pre-Laura, when Laura died,
Yeah, but now, you know, not that she's given up or whatever, but she's more content to die when she does, because you know she'll see Laura again. But equally,
yes,
you know, we've another daughter, Kate, who had presented us with our lovely little Evie, our grandchild, in January, who's fantastic and really funny. But you see, I don't think giving up is in the human nature for the most part,
right,
particularly if you're spiritually aware. But what I thought was interesting that you said then, Philip, was about surrender, because in that surrendering, you don't give up. There's a difference between giving up and surrendering. I think if you surrender in the sense of you accept your condition, your prognosis, whatever it is,
yes,
you know, and this for Amy and particularly for me was is the biggest thing about the whole thing, that you have to embrace your death. Now, for most people, as you said earlier, the horizon is a long way away. And as
yeah,
I saw John King mentioned, we never actually meet that horizon. It keeps going further back. And so
yeah,
life continues. But suddenly your horizon is suddenly very close.
yeah.
You know. And what was most important for me was accepting it. You know, as you said, we're all going to die,
Yeah.
you know, but we don't expect to die yet. So
But this
suddenly,
is
when you're told, well, we'll give you this palliative care because it's all we can do, you know, and we'll keep you pain free, kind of thing. This is what, and you've suddenly got this thing. I mean, I was in shock for I think a good 10 days. I didn't speak.
really,
You know, I
you
couldn't
were
speak. I sort of said yes when I was offered a cup of tea, and I think I ate some beans, and that was
mm,
probably about it. Literally for 10 days, I couldn't verbalize anything. I was
th-
trying to get it, you
try,
know, to
yeah.
get the fact that I was dying, basically.
And I think this is a really interesting point you've made, and you show. I showed, somebody said,
I
totally,
saw,
absolutely
yes,
exquisite.
and
The
thank you.
difference between so
Yes,
if I understand you correctly, you're saying on the one hand you have this kind of radical acceptance of the what is, if you could put it that way,
yes,
surrendering to that. This is what is happening to me right now.
yep,
This is the situation, but
yep.
that's not the same as giving up.
No, not at
And
all.
I
It's
hadn't
the
appreciated.
opposite.
Thank you for that, because I hadn't sort of
Okay.
teased those two apart.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
because
very
I think
interesting.
um that in that there's a sort of, it's almost like a grace, I suppose. There's a yielding and a softness because you can accept it and learn to love it. We have so much fear around our death, you know, which
Mm,
could, you know, there can be a fear of dying and there can be a fear of dying horribly. I think those are two things,
yeah,
and that is one thing, you know, that cancer can give you a not very dignified death, but it's not going to
mm,
be horrible,
yeah,
which is one of Amy's fears. And they've told her, you are not going to have a horrible death. When it
yeah,
happens,
yeah,
you will be fine.
yeah,
And I'm not too bothered. But suddenly, you know, and obviously, as druids and so on, spiritually aware people of whatever path we are, that can help with that fear.
yeah.
But it's, believe me, it's different when it's suddenly
Suddenly,
slapped in front of your face. But I think that what I came to do or came to realize is that I've got to embrace this,
yeah,
you know, and I have literally come face to face with death, which is through a shamanic healing experience I have, which I'm happy to share. But the important thing, and I think the biggest thing for me, was the first thing I had to do was I needed to prepare for my funeral. And I
right,
wrote that out, the instructions, even the music I want played, everything. And I
right,
organized all the official stuff and gave it to Kate, the daughter, in a sealed it. I don't want to read it. So
mm,
fine, I'll print it all out. There's a memory stick with the music on. When I go, open it and it'll tell you what to do.
great.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so that was the first thing. And I needed to get on with that. You know,
mm,
as soon as I was physically capable of doing it, that was done. Then I could relax and start to get into the more mental and emotional side, you know,
yeah,
and got to this point where suddenly it was all okay. Somebody had said, was there a defining moment? There was, but I don't know how it happened.
Mm.
I go for shamanic healing once a month to this amazing lady who only lives 10 minutes away. It's incredible.
Great. Yeah.
And I was walking to there one month, and it was a beautifully sunny morning, and I was looking at the trees and having a chat with them and all of this. And it suddenly dawned on me, I'm at peace with this.
Mm.
You know, I
It
don't know
came
when
to
I'm going to
you. Yeah.
die. That's fine.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this will sound way out there or not, but I'll throw it out there. One of the I've since then the meditations I do have become much longer and deeper things.
Right.
The morning ceremony that I do has become so much more meaningful. The visualization as I'm greeting the directions and so on are clear. It's weird. Everything seems a bit more alive. In dying, we become alive. It's a bit dark.
Yeah.
But I've got a bit more into the mysticism side of it and communicating, particularly with Thoth, the Egyptian god Thoth,
Right.
as legendary creator of the Book of Thoth, i.e., the Tarot. And in meditation, one of the experiences I had was I asked him about dying, about if I've still got this work to do, if I'm meant to be doing this work with the tarot, because that was one of the main things. Why am I dying if I've got all this stuff I want to do? And he said, you've got your cancer so that you die at the correct time, in effect. And that shifted something for me as well. I thought, oh, well, that's okay then.
Yeah.
It sounds weird, but it did. I thought, all right, that makes sense now. I know I'll go when I'm meant to go, and that's
when you're
fine.
meant to go. Because I remember you saying right at the beginning when you first told me about it, you said, I've got all these books to write. I don't want to die.
I have. Yes, absolutely. I am not done yet. I would, I'd just be sad, really. I'm having a fine time. I love life. It's amongst all its, what's the Desiderata thing, all its sham, drudgery and broken dreams, it's still a beautiful world, something like that. And I believe that. It is, and I've got lots of love in my life in lots of different ways. And I'd be sad to go, but when it happens, that's okay.
Yes.
But, I don't want to go. Yeah, I'm still good.
You've got work to do.
I've got stuff to do.
Yes. Yes.
There's
some lovely comments and questions coming in. Let me I just wanted to pick up on a few. Thank you for all your comments.
Yes.
Let's have a look. John Davis, I remember a story, fictitious or otherwise, that St. Francis was gardening and was asked, what would you do if you were told that the world will end in 5 minutes? He said, I'd carry on gardening.
Yeah, absolutely, John.
Yes. Another way of that. Now, Tally is asking a question. Was there a defining moment when you reached a level of acceptance that caused you to shift your perspective from uncertainty to maybe, for lack of a better words, being at peace with the situation?
Well, I think that was those 2 moments that I mentioned, when I was walking off to see my healer, and it just shifted, and it was one of those things that it wasn't anything I did. It just suddenly occurred, and I was like, oh, blimey, that's good. It just happened. And then the Thoth saying to me, well, you'll die at the correct time. It's kind of comforting. So it's those, but it's putting ourselves in those places. I think
it's doing the work, as it were, and
that sense of surrender. It's embracing your death. That for me is the key thing, and that was something Amy and I have both said. It's a lonely place sometimes. Because although we have wonderful friends and lots of people that love us and we love them, and we're very, very lucky like that, but it was very difficult to get anyone to sort of accept our death. They would always say, no, you can beat this and all of that. So we believe that, even though we've been told it's not curable, that's fine. What we need you to do, if you can, is be there alongside us and accept our death with us. And nobody somehow could, and which is understandable.
They're so keen on wanting you to survive, as it were.
Yes, absolutely. And but they tended to think that by looking at your death, you're being negative and accepting it and giving up. And like I said, it's the opposite. It really is.
I think there's a great insight there into that distinction between giving up and acceptance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But it's the embracing of it that is so important for
yeah,
me. Whenever anything bad has sort of happened to me in my life, or I've got down and whatever, and I should probably say this doesn't mean that I'm, happy and cheerful and accepting all the time. Believe me, I'm not. We have tears, and we have lots of tears.
yeah,
It's incredible. It's like, every television program we watched, somebody was dying of cancer. We got to the point where it became, we were joking, like, yep, there it is, and it
yeah,
still
yeah.
happens. It's incredible.
Yes,
But we do have that, so we're not pretending or shying away from anything. We let that happen, and we will just cry together or do whatever we need to do.
yeah.
But it's the embracing of it, and you've got to go into that darkness to do it. And I did do that.
There's
You've
that
got to go
wonderful,
through that.
yeah. There's that wonderful phrase of, I've forgotten who it wasn't, Saint Teresa of Avila, but it was a saint with a name like
Yes,
that, who said, if you die before you die, then when you die, you won't die. Do you know
yes.
that one? You
I
know,
don't, but I get it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That somehow in that embracing and acceptance of the fact that we will die,
Mm,
that somehow we act. The way I understand it
mm,
is that we access a part of our consciousness that is perhaps beyond death, as it were,
yes.
and reinforce that. So when we die, we're
Mhm,
located in that. Um,
mhm.
um, Let me now, Doc Abbey said, Steve, you said that you felt
Yeah.
alive in the midst of the moment of shock of diagnosis, prognosis, and illness. Do you think that your spirituality helped you increase your vitality and overcome?
Well, yes, I mean, hugely. Not initially, because I just wasn't well enough. There was a point at which, when I was in the hospital, I again had all this medication, but when I was awake, in the middle of the night and all of that, what does one do?
Mm,
Staring out at the lights over Poole Harbour, where I was at the top floor of the hospital, so I had a glorious view. Um, and I would be doing things to try and increase that and connect with it. But it's very hard to get into meditation when you're full of morphine and God knows
mm.
what else.
Yeah, yeah.
And there I was in the corridor at 4 a.m. doing yoga
Yeah, yeah.
as much as I could. I didn't have a mat or anything. God knows what the nurses thought, but they didn't care.
Yeah.
Um, so I, instinctively, once I got home and I started to feel reasonably well, then yeah, and that I have a sort of morning yoga practice, 5 or 6 days a week, and
Mm,
that's truthful.
yeah,
And that makes a huge, massive difference. And my
right.
morning ceremony and the meditations, but even that, in terms of the blessing, my food has become more important. So that sense of spirituality seeped through everything. So yeah,
Maybe this is a
hugely.
good. Maybe this is a good time. You said earlier on something like, "I do have a regime that I follow," and maybe
Yes.
we can get into that later.
Oh
Well,
yes, yes.
tell us, what is that? What
Yeah,
does that
because
do?
I think I want to tell people because I'm proud of it, really, and I think it's doing something good. I I mean, I've never been a massive one for swallowing loads of tablets and vitamins. I mean, it was an event before all this started. If I took 2 paracetamol, I'd
Right, right.
use essential oils and whatever all the time is my
Yeah,
medicine cabinet,
yeah.
and herbs and stuff. Whereas now, there's so many. You should see our kitchen cupboard is just one massive medicine cabinet.
Oh, of
But
medicine, of conventional medicine,
well, it
or sort of
was, yes,
supplements and
yeah. I
alternatives?
mean, I take a digestive omeprazole. I was on 4 a day. I've got that down to one.
Mm,
I have to take that one. It's not good if I don't, but that's
mm,
the only conventional medicine I'm taking apart from the injection each month. But I have and again, you've got to look at your own individual cancer, because cancer is individual, where
yeah,
it is, what it's doing, and everything. So
mm,
there's lots of things that will help people with different types of cancer. Amy takes boswellia, which is Indian frankincense,
mm,
which it's a herb, and that's good for blocking the blood brain barrier.
Right.
It was only when she wasn't taking it, for a reason that I won't go into, but another medical reason, that the brain tumor occurred. Anyway, so she's taking that.
She's taking Boswellia. Okay. Yeah.
I take a multivitamin because the hormone injection thing tends to reduce your vitamin levels. So I take a multivitamin. I take milk thistle because that's a herb which is really good for your liver.
Yeah.
Turmeric, which is a good anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory thing to take. Now it's blue-green algae, but it's got two different names, and I can't remember what they are.
Spirulina or
yes, it's something like that.
You're right.
Spirulina, something like I can't remember what it's called. I just take the tablet. But I looked at that, and that's a very good thing, I think. Oh, and vitamin D because of the immune system, which Amy takes as well. Yeah. So I do that. But I think my morning ceremonies, which are greeting directions and so forth, and the Druid prayers, the prayer for peace and the Druid prayer, I chant 3 almonds. And I have a physical movement. I wrote about it in Touchstone once, where I raise my arms and bring them down. So I'm combining a sort of bit of qigong with the almonds, some meditation and yoga. So I'm doing that in the mornings. Lots of long meditations where I'll whack on some continuous music that carries on, like the ones that we put in the chakra journey.
Right. Okay.
Like those. And I'll go on journeys with an eye patch over my eyes, so it's all dark, and I'm away from there talking to Thoth or whoever.
and do you do those journeys yourself, or do you whack on recordings that you listen to?
I just put the music on.
I just put the music on, and then you do the process. As
I'm gone for about an hour.
Right. Okay. Every day.
Glorious.
Every day.
Sorry.
Every day.
No, much as I would like to. I don't think I could.
Right.
I don't do as many, or get time to do as many as I'd like to do, 2 or 3 a week, but I'm normally 1 or 2.
1 or 2 a week. Okay. Yeah.
But I have a friend come around and we share one of those, which we're doing tomorrow night, which I'm really looking forward to.
Oh, lovely.
And I'm
lovely.
going
you
for
do it, you both lie down together and do it.
Where he sits, we have one of those zero gravity chairs that kind of reclines and your feet go up.
Oh, right.
Brilliant
Okay.
for meditation. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we put the music on and the lights down and away we go. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. So I think all of those things are, for me, they make a massive difference. The energy flow, the Nufa flow through me from the yoga. My yoga now is much slower and deeper. I work, as I say, consciously with the Nufa flow as I'm doing it much more, and that makes a big difference as well. Yeah, and as do the almonds for that matter.
And and do you think having Amy having had cancer too, do you think that is strangely helpful because you can both support each other from the same sort of position rather than one of you being healthy and one of you being unwell? You're both.
Well, yes, we've sort of balanced each other out. I mean, I can't have her having all the glory, can I? Gotta keep up. But obviously, during her worst time and nursing her through her chemo and everything else, and then of course she was able to return the favour and look after me. Bless her.
There's something rather touching in that, and
well, we're together, 24/7 really, because my work's here.
Yeah, you work at home,
but Amy,
so,
worked doing all my stuff with me as well.
Yeah.
But there's I mean, it would have been incredibly difficult to go through what I did without Amy, or not having Amy being able to literally empathize. And I could be able to say, look, I'm feeling this, do you think no, it's fine, don't worry. And we still do that. We do that now. She's
the importance of a close relationship and a supportive one. Kate is asking, I'm glad to know you're doing well right now. When you were first diagnosed, did you ever find yourself reevaluating your beliefs pertaining to faith to determine why you believe as you do and whether they still held true? Yes. Did you have any reevaluations or did you just?
I don't think I did, actually. They were just there. I think, because I've followed this path really for as long as I can remember. I mean, I got into tarot my teens, and from there, reading about witchcraft and to Druidry from there really. So, and that's what I'm 60 now. So
Right.
I don't think I did reevaluate
Right. Right.
whether they still hold true in the days, weeks, months that follow. Well, they just grew. I think I sort of fell back on them more than anything else,
Right.
really.
Okay. Yeah. Because I guess
Yeah.
some people could have an experience where suddenly they start to question their faith and wonder if it,
Yeah,
you know, if it
yeah.
was,
No, that just
no.
didn't occur. I mean, it made it was so much more important for me, certainly. And
Yeah.
now, I thought, well, I mean, I've wasn't as good, inverted commas, as strict in terms of doing the ceremonial bit of my morning practice.
Hmm.
Whereas now it is so important,
You've
you
added.
know,
You've really.
and I
Yeah.
connect so much more to it, and all
Yeah.
sorts of bits and pieces, of the appreciation of the natural world and whatever, all kinds of things that were always there, but they're much more alive now. So,
Yes.
you know, so
Yes. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to run through a few of, I think we're coming up to our time in a minute, but let me just,
yeah,
Liz Hill's comment about greeting death like in Harry Potter. And then Driss Muin says, was it Michael Montaigne who said, I want death to find me planting my cabbages? Lovely.
that's good. Yeah,
And then Naomi saying, being ready to go doesn't mean right now.
absolutely. Yes. And in that being ready to go, you become more alive.
Yes. Alice saying, yes, embracing and acceptance. It's not giving up, it's freeing.
Yes, it
Uh,
is.
and
Yeah,
and Paul says, yes, that's a huge shift.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I hear, um, Steve, was there a particular tarot card you remember when you started working with Tarot for Grief?
Um, let me just find the start of my. I don't know if I'll be able to do this now. The start of the diary bit, where it began, because I would literally, here we are, chapter 5, my grief process. I would shuffle the deck, and it puts it all into perspective of the supposed 5 stages of grief, which I won't go to. But I mean, I started with the Queen of Wands, which sounds a bit bizarre. But it was Wands relates to the anger stage, which I never really had, actually.
Right, that's an interesting. So you didn't
Really do
in
anger.
you don't do anger, and
Not
you haven't
really.
found
No.
yourself sort of railing, because that is can be a reaction to people as kind of fury that you've
Well, it can be. Yeah, I didn't really have that. Just more of a sadness, I think. Again, at that not being able to do the stuff I want to do.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
more sadness and grief.
but there wasn't one particular card, I don't think.
No,
It was just an instinctive sort of turning to the tarot to say,
uh, uh,
what do I do with this?
yeah, but and if you're interested, do dive into Steve's book, Tarot for Grief, because
Mhm.
I think
It's on
there's
Amazon.
much to
Yeah, you
learn
can
from that. Doc the Kiwi, I have to leave as I cross the range today. Doc, down in New Zealand, I wonder which range it is. Um,
yes.
Thank you for sharing your journey, that of Amy and your beautiful daughter. May you journey in love always. May grace continue to hold tightly to your hand, Doc.
Bless you. Thank you, Doc.
I think, and as Tally says afterwards, I think thank you for joining in and sharing your thoughts with us. And I think everybody will
Mm.
feel the same way. So, Steve,
Okay.
that's been so as somebody's saying, so enriching. Thank you for being so candid and open with us.
Oh, it's really.
You are an inspiration to us because deep down, everybody is really scared of going through what you and Amy
Yeah,
have gone through, and we need to talk about this. It's really,
I
really
do think
important.
so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do think we
yeah.
do. Yeah. It just occurred to me, I was actually going to say this at the
Mm,
start, but we
mm.
were talking and I didn't. Can I read a poem,
Please,
which I
yeah,
think is beautiful? And it comes from surprisingly enough, a book on tarot.
yeah,
Tarot for Light Tears. It's a thing of beauty. This book. It's full of colour, which you can't really see on there,
yeah,
but beautiful anecdotes about the Light Seers Tarot, which I personally think is an amazingly brilliant deck. But that aside, Chris Ann, who's the creator of it, it's a very new book It's only
Mm.
been out a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But in it, she talks about the light seer and the shadow seer of each
Mm.
card. So the
Mm.
light and dark, and that's something I've been working with quite a lot.
Mm.
In my own self, the thing of embracing the darkness of your cancer and your death, and
Yeah.
as a path to healing, and actually learning to love your cancer.
Mm.
I read Christopher Hughes's "As the Last Leaf Falls" book.
Mm.
Am I all right for a couple of minutes? I know.
Yes. Yeah.
I've read that, which is as a mortician, he's written it, and it's a really good, very, very good book for about death and dying from a pagan perspective.
Mm.
And he talked about the apoptosis, I think it's called. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right, but it's programmed cell death, where the brain actually sends messages to cells to say, look, it's, you're up. Your number's up, it's time to die. And they get that message and then immediately start dying. And then, of course, this is happening all the time, every day, millions of them. And then new cells born and grow. But for some reason, some of them don't get that message and they run away. And that can give rise to cancer.
Right. Okay.
And I think, and there, as Christopher was saying, nobody knows why some of them don't respond and die. But we could theorize that perhaps they respond in fear, and I thought, well, that's very interesting, because fear can do so much damage to us.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, to me, the opposite of fear is love. So actually, I got to learn to love my cancer. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm trying to learn to love my cancer.
Right. Lovely.
I don't love it, really, but I'm working on that.
You're working on it. And were you going to read a poem or?
Yes, I was going to read this poem because when I read it, it just struck me as being so appropriate for what we're talking about. So it doesn't have a title, but it comes from this beautiful book. And into the grey we follow like 1,000 flickering stars, and there in a sunlit hollow we lose and find what is ours. And into the shadow we wander, what that glimmer of light has in store, and then into the light we remember that at some point we dreamt of much more. So into the grey we meander, holding hope as we anchor our hearts. Then we pray and we dance and surrender, finding courage and trust in new starts. And into the light we face bravely, like the faces of love in the flesh, and we smile both wildly and gravely, and with spirit and source we enmesh. So into the grey we follow like 1,000 flickering stars, and there in a sunlit hollow we lose and find what is ours. So I thought it was just beautifully.
It's a lovely way.
Kind of appropriate, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Steve.
So I thought I'd share that with you.
Lovely. Thank you. That's a lovely way to end. That's beautiful. So you stay in the green room.
Yes.
But we'll say good night to everybody. And
yes, blessings everybody.
Thank you all for being in this conversation together. Thank you, Steve, for sharing all that you did with us.
Thank you, everybody, for all your comments and offerings and all your love.
Yeah, lots of lovely statements. Okay.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.